Hello everyone, Prime here. Today we were going to be talking about 3 potential new gods that could be added into Smite, but then I read this Reddit post, and it's not too unlike a lot of Reddit posts that you might find talking about Smite being compared to other MOBAs like League of Legends or Dota 2. I disagreed with it a little, and some good points I thought were posted within the Reddit, so I figured we're going to find some gods that could be added into Smite, but also gods that allow for underused mechanics that could be used more in Smite, or some somewhat new interesting twists on current abilities, or just outright new abilities that allow high-res to be creative. So the first god that we've got here is from Celtic mythology, and that's Olwen. He's a god of the underworld, or otherworld, and the king of Arwen, which is the otherworld or underworld, where eternal youth is pretty much a constant thing, disease isn't really a thing, food is plentiful and it never really runs out. Also, there's a magic cauldron with rejuvenating powers, and it doesn't boil anything for cowards. Olwen himself is also a god of the wild hunt, of war, and of revenge, so he's got similarities to a lot of the gods of Smite. I picked him purely because he was a god of the underworld. We even have an MOTD dedicated to sort of gods of death or gods of the underworld, where pretty much only the gods of underworld or death, such as Jonquet, Osiris, Anubis, Hades, so on and so forth, are put into this mode, and you can only play as those with and against these gods. So because there are so many gods of the underworld, and high-res will probably add more of these types of gods, there's a fair chance that we'll actually see him, because we do have a Celtic goddess of death, but that doesn't mean that we won't necessarily see another god of the underworld. We have Osiris and Anubis, and technically also Thoth, and they kind of reside over similar things. And I don't really have any interesting abilities or outside of him summoning his hellhounds. I don't really have anything super interesting that high-res could do with his kit necessarily. I just include him more as something that high-res could play around with and be creative on their own. Moving on to the next pantheon, we have Japanese mythology, and we have a god of hunting, Hori. Now, he was the grandson of Amaterasu, a brother of the fisherman god Hodori, and a son of Ninigi, a god of cookery. Now, Hori and Hodori exchanged tools of their trade. Hori's trade, as he was a hunter, he exchanged his bow, and Hodori, being a fisherman, exchanged his fishing tools, so, a fishing net and all of that sort of thing. A fishing rod as well, of course. Hori might have lost his brother's fishing hook, and Hodori wasn't exactly too pleased about this. Now, there are some variations in the story of how this went down. Hori might have tried to fashion a replacement for the hook out of his own hunting swords, or the two of them might have quarreled and argued about the whole thing, with Hodori even going so far as barring Hori from their home until his hook is returned. But either way, Hori does go out to sea to find the hook, be it that it's because he's put into a basket and sails off for the sea kami or the sea god's sort of domain. He tries to find the sea god and asks their help, or he rows out in his boat and eventually attracts the attention of the sea god's daughter, her name either being Otohime or Toyota Mabime. We'll just stick with Otohime. Hori does get distracted under the sea. He meets the sea kami, that either being Raijin or Watasumi, and Hori spends a long time under the sea. He gets married to Otohime, and they have a child on the way. He also convinces Raijin, in variations of the story, that he's not a fisherman, because Raijin isn't a fan, or Ryujin isn't a fan of fishermen. Kind of ironic considering his brother's a fisherman and all. Watasumi even finds the lost hook, so Ryujin permits Hori to return to the surface, and he does. He sees his brother, he returns the hook. The brother is a bit perturbed by the fact that Hori was gone for so long, and then Hori returns to his wife, who's beginning or just about to be ready to start giving birth to their child, and Otohime requests that Hori is just not present. She wants to give birth to the child alone for her own personal reasons. And Hori, thinking that he would be a better father by being there, and it would be just the right thing for him to stand by his wife as she's giving birth, ignores this, finds a little crack in the sort of wall between where she's giving birth and where Hori is, and gazes upon her dragon form, gasps or is shocked by what he sees, and then Otohime is embarrassed or shamed, and retreats away, leaving Hori with their child. Otohime isn't necessarily a dragon. Variation, she might be a wani, a crocodile, or a shark. She does retreat, and it's implied that Hori never sees his wife again. There's more to the story, but I mention the story because in Variations, Hori has to dive to the bottom of the sea to get to Otohime and the sea kami. I'm thinking Hades and Izanami both have sort of diving skills. You know, they go underground for a bit and then they pop back up. Of course, Hades, it's a bit easier to tell where he's going to pop up. You know how long he's going to be underground for once you see the skill a couple times. Izanami, it's a bit more ambiguous, plus she gets a stealth. But we don't really have a character that sort of pops underground and then just sort of travels underground at sort of maybe a normal walking speed, but they're just underground. So perhaps this chap could dive underground and sort of swim through. I know this sounds weird, but just stick with me here. Sort of swim through the ground or dive through the ground and have a skill like that. I know it would probably be better suited to like a mole god or a digging sort of god more so than a hunter god that lived under the sea for a bit, but still, I think it would be an interesting way to incorporate the ability, and fairly unique, because how often do you see someone swimming through the ground? Yeah, not very often, I wouldn't think. There's that. And he would be a hunter on top of all of that. So could be a ranged assassin, but having a ranged assassin really isn't necessary, considering Hi-Rez's current design philosophies, but you know. Now, the last god that we have here is from Mayan mythology. Their name is Kini Cheo. They're the Mayan god of the sun. They are the literal Mayan sun, apparently. And this guy has control over disease and drought. During the nighttime, he transformed into a jaguar and he would travel through Xibalba. Now, at some point, Mayan rulers associated themselves with the god as well. Also, warriors would do this, and he was associated with jaguars, of course. He might have also been an aspect of Itzamna, a ruler of heaven and a god of day and night who appears as 4 other gods who encased the world. Now, thanks to the fact that he was associated with Mayan rulers and warriors, I don't think it's too far-fetched that he could have some sort of interesting buffing skill. Khepri and Amaterasu are both sun gods, or gods related to the sun, that have buffing skills. You know, Khepri with his 2 and ultimate, Amaterasu having that buff in her 1 that works well with her kit. Now, an interesting twist that Hi-Rez could do with this is that someone mentioned in the Reddit post that in Dota, you have tanky characters or these strength heroes that are similar in that they're strength heroes, but they fulfill different roles. The Wraith King, Sven, and Chaos Knight all have similar point-click CC abilities, but Wraith King's focus is that he's got a lot of CC. Sven's focus is that he's excellent at team fights, and Chaos Knight's focus is that he's very good at split pushing. We could have a series of gods like this who are good at buffing other characters, but they have a lot of different focuses. Part of the argument was that we have a lot of characters who bring a certain thing to the table, but the thing that they bring to the table can easily be replaced by another character. So there's not that much need for you to play a lot of different characters other than what might be meta. So considering the fact that this guy had control over droughts and disease, perhaps he could give his allies the ability to have anti-heal on their attacks, as well as having some sort of anti-healing aura that Hi-Rez could play around how that could work. But of course, being a god of the sun, maybe he could have some sort of healing aura, or Hi-Rez could get creative and figure out the specifics of his kit, but you get the point. Another underused skill that the sun gods really should have utilized more, because they are the best at this, and there is one sun god who does use this mechanic, and I can understand why it's an underused mechanic, but that's Raz 2, and the fact that it's a blind. And see, because Smite's a third-person game, having something like a blind is a lot more harder to escape and a lot more perhaps damaging or much more of a powerful CC than it would be in a top-down MOBA, where if that was sort of a problem or you needed to escape because you're blinded, you could click somewhere away from your enemy on the screen and it's a lot easier to get away from. More gods could utilize a blind, but I also see why blinds aren't necessarily overused in Smite as well, because it's not particularly nice to have a white flash on your screen. And of course, you've got certain people with things like certain medical conditions that you might want to consider before you have a ton of flashing lights on the screens as well. So that could be a thing. That could be a reason why Smite doesn't include a lot of blinds. But nevertheless, I'm sure there are other mechanics like that you can use, because Smite is a third person. It's a third person MOBA. You can have different sorts of CCing abilities and damage abilities that don't work nearly as well from a top-down view. But that was the video. Tell me your thoughts. Are there better gods that could be used that fit the sort of weird criteria that I set for the video? Be interesting to see what you think in the comment section below. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave it a like. And if you want to see more content just like this and you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And you may as well hit the notification bell for good measure as well. But until the next video, I have been Prime, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.